So, ladies and gentlemen, before this mock draft starts, you're seeing this before the intro or anything. I just got done recording this mock draft. I checked my phone, and Aaron Rodgers has been traded to the Jets, and the Jets and Packers have swapped first-round picks, which will not be in this mock draft because, like I said, I just got done recording it. I'm not recording it again. It took me you can see the timestamp of this video. It took me 40 minutes. So, I'm not going to record that again. Just know that even with the picks flipped, now that they're flipped, the original position, they're still going to get the same players. So the player that the Packers drafted at 15th overall in my mock is still going to the Packers at 13 now that they swapped. And now that the Jets have the 15th overall pick, they're still getting the same player that they drafted at 13th. So I just wanted to clarify that up because when I recorded this news hasn't happened yet or hadn't happened yet. But now that it has, I just wanted to clarify that up. Thank you for watching and enjoy the mock. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for taking a few minutes out of your day to spend them here on the Parker Love Sports YouTube channel. I am your host, Parker, and in today's video, we are going to be going over my first 2023 NFL mock draft for all 32 teams. And to me, it's just a bit surprising because if you look at my videos in the past, you know, of course, I'm a Broncos fan. I do a bunch of Broncos 7-round mock drafts, but in years past, I've done 5, 6, 32-team NFL mock drafts for the first round, but this past year, I really haven't done so. You know, I was going to do a way too early mock draft after the 2022 NFL draft, never posted that, and just never really posted a full first-round mock draft for the 2023 NFL draft until now. So hopefully next year, I'm back on my game for the 2024 NFL draft, posting 32-team mock drafts just for you guys to be able to watch. For those of you who are fans who maybe aren't fans of the Broncos like myself, but for all my Broncos fans, I will be posting another 7-round mock draft for the Broncos probably tomorrow, and then Wednesday I'm going to post my top 10 players at each position for the day before the draft, obviously, and then on draft day I will be going live. I will be going live, so make sure you look forward to that if you want to come and join in the stream. Now, that being said, as always, I do got to mention that Jesus is king. I pray that you give your life to him. He's got a plan and a purpose for you, and I just hope that you accept Jesus with your whole heart and believe that he died on the cross for your sins. And if you truly believe with your whole heart that Jesus died on the cross for your sins, then you go to heaven. It's that simple. It's that easy. It's not by our works which we go to heaven. It's our faith in Jesus, died on the cross for our sins that go to heaven. And a lot of people won't like that I'm saying this, but quite frankly, I don't care. I have a small platform on YouTube, and I'm going to use that to share the message and the gospel with as many people as possible. Now, that being said, let's go ahead and let's jump into this video. So for those of you who skipped right here, I am just going to mention real quick that on draft day, I will be doing a live stream. That live stream is already planned on my channel if you want to come and hang out. You know, I am a Broncos fan, so we obviously don't have a pick, but if you want to come hang out with me during the NFL draft, that stream is already planned, and I will be streaming for day 2 and day 3 as well. Those streams aren't planned yet, but they will be planned probably the night before, just so I can make the thumbnails and put the prospects that are still available in the thumbnail. So, yeah, if you guys are interested in that, I will be streaming all 3 days. But in this mock draft, the first overall pick is going to be Bryce Young, quarterback out of Alabama, going to the Carolina Panthers. Yeah. The Panthers, I think they needed to trade up to number 1 with the Bears. Like, listen, Sam Darnold hasn't worked out for you. I know he's with the 49ers now. Baker Mayfield hasn't worked out, and now he's with the Buccaneers. You got Matt Corral, who you drafted last year. I don't know. You got P.J. Walker. But Bryce Young, to me, he has always been my number 1 quarterback. I remember in the pre-draft last year, and quite frankly, after the 2022 NFL draft, a lot of people were saying, well, C.J. Stroud, I think, is the number 1 guy. Bryce Young has always been my quarterback 1. Sure, he's on the shorter side, but, you know, quite frankly, I don't really care about that. I think that Bryce Young has the talent to be a starter in the NFL. Will he be the Panthers' day 1 starter? Maybe. We will have to see. But, yeah, I think the Panthers have got to go Bryce Young here at number 1. They gave up a lot to get their franchise quarterback. You don't give up this much to go up and draft Will Anderson. Will Anderson is probably the best player in this class, but you only give up the amount that they did for a quarterback. Let's see, what did they give up? They gave up the 9th overall pick this year. I believe they gave up their first-round pick next year, a 2025 second-round pick. I believe they gave up a few more second-round picks, and of course, DJ Moore to get to this position. So, yeah, I mean, the Panthers, I don't know what you're going to do. I mean, you got Shee Smith, you got Terrace Marshall for Bryce Young to throw to, but in the second round, you honestly might need to look for maybe a Cedric Tillman, Kayshon Boutte, someone to get Bryce Young to throw the ball to. But Bryce Young in college was spectacular. In 34 games, he had 624 completions on 949 attempts. He threw for 8,356 yards, 80 touchdowns, 12 interceptions, at a passer rating of 165.0. And I need to start speeding this up because there's obviously, well, normally there's 32 picks, but 31 this year because the Dolphins, of course, have forfeited their pick. But the thing you like about Bryce Young is he doesn't turn the ball over a lot. You can see the 12 interceptions to the 80 touchdowns. That is impressive, and he is going to take care of the football, which is one of the things you like the most about Bryce Young. Now, I'm going to start speeding these up because we don't have all day to be here. With the second overall pick, I have the Texans selecting C.J. Stroud, quarterback out of Ohio State. I don't buy that the Texans don't want to draft a quarterback. I think that is complete smokescreen. I don't know why they would want to smokescreen. I think Bryce Young is their guy. Of course, they won the final game of the season to get the number 2 overall pick, and then the Panthers jumped them to get the number 1 overall pick. And there's been rumors that they don't like C.J. Stroud because of his connections to Deshaun Watson and whatnot. I just think that's a bunch of smokescreen. C.J. Stroud is a tremendous quarterback prospect for Ohio State. Just like Bryce Young, C.J. Stroud doesn't turn over the ball that often, and C.J. Stroud is probably the most accurate quarterback in terms of his ball placement in this class. In 25 games for the Buckeyes, he has 575 completions on 830 attempts. He's thrown for 8,123 yards, 85 touchdowns, 12 interceptions, with a passer rating of 182.4. So, yeah, C.J. Stroud is, right behind Bryce Young. I think he is a very strong quarterback prospect as well, and I just don't buy it. I think it's a smokescreen that the Texans don't want to draft a quarterback. However, I will say this. I think the Texans are committed to GM, Nick Caserio and head coach DeMeco Ryans, that maybe they don't love C.J. Stroud, and this is just a hypothetical. If they don't love C.J. Stroud, then maybe they roll another year with Davis Mills, and then they get the number 1 overall pick next year to take Caleb Williams. That's just a theory, but I think that's complete malarkey, and I think C.J. Stroud goes number 2 overall to the Houston Texans. The number 3 overall pick, I have the Cardinals going Will Anderson, edge out of Alabama. To me, you think of the 2 best players in this class, Will Anderson, Jalen Carter, and to me, Will Anderson is the better prospect, in my opinion. I think a lot of people have Jalen Carter over Will Anderson, but in my opinion, Will Anderson is the better prospect. Just his pure dominance at Alabama. Not this past season that he just played, but the season before, he was snubbed of being a Heisman finalist. He was probably the best player, definitely the best defensive player that year, but maybe even the best player that season, and he was snubbed his sophomore year. Didn't have as great of a season, but still, I think he is going to be a dominant edge rusher. And to me, so like I said, Will Anderson is my number 1 prospect in this year's draft, and I have him above Jalen Carter. And just due to the fact of Jalen Carter's, there's been some character issues. There's been, of course, his legal trouble with the incident down in Georgia, which is, it's sad. But yeah, so I do have the Cardinals going with Will Anderson, and then also I do believe that edge is a more premium position than an interior defensive lineman. So that's why I have the Cardinals going here with Will Anderson, and just to add some pass rush to that defense, especially with losing Zach Allen in free agency to my Broncos. In 41 games with the Crimson Tide, he has 114 solo tackles, 90 assists, 204 total tackles, 58.5 tackles for loss, and 34.5 sacks. Those are insane numbers on their own. So yeah, the Cardinals are getting a beast here. So before we get into the Colts pick, I do want to say that there is only one trade in this mock draft because it's the only I don't like doing trades in my mock draft, but in this scenario, I needed to do a trade just for it just for this mock to, I guess, make sense in terms of where one player is going to go. So just keep that in mind. But most of the time, I don't like to do trades. But with the 4th overall pick, I have the Colts selecting Anthony Richardson, quarterback out of Florida. I'm not as high on Anthony Richardson as a lot of people are. In fact, it's close. It's close between him and Will Levis for me. It really is. Anthony Richardson, he's got a high ceiling, but I don't know. If you look at his stats in 22 games with Florida, look at specifically at the touchdown to interception ratio. 24-15, that is not good at all. You need him to improve that. Now, granted, I do think he probably should have returned back to Florida for one more year, but he's coming out. He's going to be a first-round pick probably. I'm just not super high on Anthony Richardson, but I feel like the Colts might be. To me, the Colts are either selecting Anthony Richardson or Will Levis here. One of the two. It's just who they prefer more, and I feel like maybe they prefer the guy with the higher upside in Anthony Richardson. The Colts, I believe I believe the Colts signed Gardner Minshew, and they have Sam Ehlinger. Do they have Nick Foles? I can't remember. I think they might, but I'm not 100% sure. So they got quarterbacks there because I do think Anthony Richardson doesn't necessarily start right away. I think he needs time to develop, kind of like Malik Willis did last year. Malik Willis, I still think needs a little bit more time to develop. And Anthony Richardson needs some time to develop. He shows flashes. He's got that high ceiling, but isn't ready to start right away. 22 games, 215 attempts. I messed that up. One sec. Let me cut here. I just realized I made a mistake. Sorry, I mixed up the completion and attempts. It is what it is. But he passed for 3,105 yards, 24 touchdowns, 15 interceptions, and if you can see the pass rating of 133.6. Moving on to the 5th overall pick, and this pains me. As a Broncos fan, this was our pick that we traded for Russell Wilson, and the Seahawks get Jalen Carter. There is that character concern and issue, but I think in Seattle with Pete Carroll, with that coaching staff, I do believe that they can help Jalen Carter and they can take care of those character issues. That staff can manage his ego and that character issue. So that's why I have him going to the Seahawks. And I mean, he is going to put up fantastic production, both in pass rushing, but in also stopping the run. So, I mean, Jalen Carter is a fantastic pick. He's my number 2 player right behind Will Anderson. So, yeah, Jalen Carter is going to be a fantastic pick for the Seahawks. Pains me as a Broncos fan, but this is a good pick for them. In 35 games played, Jalen Carter has 44 solo tackles, 39 assist tackles, 83 total tackles, 18.5 tackles for loss, and 6 sacks. With the 6th overall pick, I have the Lions selecting Devon Witherspoon, cornerback out of Illinois. With them trading Jeff Okudah, I don't think Amani Oruwariye has been re-signed by them. He might have. Let me look right here. Amani Oruwariye, is he? No, he was signed by the New York Giants. That's someone who I wanted the Broncos to go after, but he was signed by the New York Giants. So with Oruwariye and Okudah no longer on the team, the Lions need to go and select a cornerback. And to me, it is 1A, 1B between Devon Witherspoon and Christian Gonzalez. It's whoever the Lions prefer more. I have Devon Witherspoon as my number 1 corner, so that's who I have him selecting here. But if it was Christian Gonzalez, I could definitely see that as well. And 41 games with the Illini, he has 157 total tackles, 25 passes defended, and 5 interceptions. And he's going to be that number 1 corner for the Lions. You just hope he's going to pan out better than Jeff Okudah did, the former number 3 overall pick. Just, didn't really work out in the NFL, didn't translate. So you hope that Devon Witherspoon can. And we've seen some great cornerback talent come into the NFL over the past few seasons. Derek Stingley wasn't bad for the Texans last year. Sauce Gardner, obviously, we saw how great he was. Tariq Woolen, we saw how great he was. For my Broncos, we saw Pat Surtain, one of the best corners in the league. I'm going to say the best, but I'm also biased. And then, of course, J.C. Horn has been no slouch either. So we'll have to see. But Devon Witherspoon is my number 1 corner, and he is going to the Lions. And then I have The number 2 corner, Christian Gonzalez, going to the Raiders right afterwards. To me, the Raiders need to work on their secondary. I thought about a quarterback here, but they also signed Jimmy Garoppolo to that 3-year contract. So that's the main reason I didn't. Just don't draft a quarterback, and then if he struggles, maybe you can go after Caleb Williams or Drake May next season. So we'll have to see. But Christian Gonzalez is a phenomenal cornerback to the Raiders. I was also thinking about an edge rusher here, but I ended up going the corner out of Oregon, formerly out of Colorado, transferred to Oregon last season. And, he was dominant for the Ducks. And, he really just rose up the board. Same thing with Devon Witherspoon. None of them were a projected first-round pick at the start of the season, but they just played so well that they rose into the first round. And yeah, I have him going to the Raiders here. In 30 games, he has 128 tackles, 17 pass defended, 4 interceptions, and, helping out Rock Yassin in the secondary. Of course, they got Nate Hobbs as well. So I'm just helping the Raiders out on defense here and getting one of the better cornerbacks in the draft to the Raiders, which is unfortunate for me as a Broncos fan. With the 8th pick, I have the Falcons selecting Tyree Wilson, edge out of Texas Tech. He's surpassed Myles Murphy. A couple guys have probably honestly surpassed Myles Murphy as the number 2 edge guy, and I had the Falcons going and addressing their defense. I could also see them addressing their wide receiver position. Of course, I know they selected Drake London in the first round last year, but I could see them also, just improving that wide receiving core with Kyle Pitts, with Drake London. But I do have them going with Tyree Wilson. And, they could very well go Will Levis here, but I do believe that they want to give Desmond Ridder a shot to be their quarterback. So that's why I'm addressing their defense right here. In 35 games, he has 121 total tackles, 32 and a half, or not 32 and a half, just 32 tackles for loss. Oh, I say just 32. 32 is a very, very good tackle for loss, and 17 sacks. He formerly played at Texas A&M, transferred to Texas Tech, and is now heading down to Atlanta in my mock draft. With the 9th overall pick, I have the Bears selecting Paris Johnson Jr., offensive tackle out of Ohio State. There's a lot of things the Bears could do after trading down from the number 1 overall spot, but I have them grabbing the number 1 offensive tackle in this draft. Now, it's tough for me because I really like Tevin Jenkins. I think he's going to be solid for the Bears this upcoming season, but I do think that they need offensive line help, specifically at the tackle position, and, tackles are a premium in the league, so getting one on a rookie contract is going to be beneficial for protecting Justin Fields. And so, yeah, I have him going with Paris Johnson Jr., the 6'6", 315-pound offensive tackle out of Ohio State. With the 10th overall pick, this is the only trade I have. I have the Buccaneers trading up with the Philadelphia Eagles to select Will Levis, quarterback out of Kentucky. To me, it was between 2 teams. It was between the Buccaneers and the Minnesota Vikings trading up at this position. But with the Vikings having Kirk Cousins still, I don't know how long he's going to be there. I had them staying put because they could draft a quarterback next year depending on how Kirk performs. But with the Buccaneers right now, Baker Mayfield is their starter with Kyle Trask as the backup. And I don't know how confident they feel in that, so I do have them moving up for the 4th best quarterback in this draft, Will Levis. I don't like the people saying, oh, he's a second-round talent. I think he's a first-round talent. I don't necessarily think maybe he's a top 10 talent, but I do think he is more of the mid to late first-round talent. But yeah, I have him going to the Buccaneers. In 38 games, he has 479 completions on 738 attempts. He's thrown for 5,876 yards, 46 TDs to 25 INTs, and 145.6 passer rating. Next, at the 11th overall pick, I have the Titans selecting Broderick Jones, offensive tackle out of Georgia. The Titans, they also need an offensive lineman, and with the Bears selecting Paris Johnson at the number 9 overall pick, I have them selecting my number 2 offensive tackle in Broderick Jones. I do have Broderick Jones over Peter Skoronski, but hey, that's just my opinion. That's my ranking. If you're a Titans fan and you want Skoronski, honestly, put him in here instead. This is my mock draft, but since he's still available, if you wanted Skoronski, you could definitely flop him in. But Skoronski to me is my number 2 overall tackle, and he's going to the Titans to protect, well, right now, Ryan Tannehill and block for Derrick Henry, but Derrick Henry could be on the move, maybe even in draft day. So we'll have to see. But I do have them addressing their offensive line, especially with them releasing Taylor Lewan. I do have them picking up Broderick Jones, the 6'4", 315-pound offensive tackle out of Georgia. With the 12th overall pick, I have the Texans selecting Jaxon Smith-Njigba, wide receiver out of Ohio State. Smith-Njigba has been my wide receiver 1 since the start of the year. Now, my opinion has changed in my unreleased way too early mock draft right after the 2022 NFL draft. I said Jaxon Smith-Njigba is one of the best wide receiver prospects I've evaluated in my time of doing these mocks, which has been since late 2019, but I'd say 2020 is my first full year of doing it. But I was definitely wrong, mostly because he was injured this season. He had a phenomenal season last year, being that dominant receiver at the Rose Bowl. The injuries just really slowed him down, and I still think he can be a super dominant receiver coming out of Ohio State. So, he's always been my wide receiver 1, even when people still might have Quentin Johnston over him. Jaxon Smith-Njigba has just been my wide receiver 1 this whole time. So I have them going to the Texans to give CJ Stroud someone to throw to. Well, he does have pieces to throw to. Of course, they traded Brandon Cooks to Dallas, but he'll have, according in this mock, CJ Stroud will have Jaxon Smith-Njigba to throw to, Nico Collins. I feel like those are and John Mechie. John Mechie coming back from, hopefully, he got diagnosed with cancer, so hopefully he can come back this season for the Texans. And, Nico Collins, Smith-Njigba, and John Mechie, that will be a very solid, decent, maybe not the greatest receiving core for the Texans. But in 23 games for the Buckeyes, he has 110 receptions, 1,698 yards, 15.4 average yards per play, and 10 touchdowns. And a little bit of a fun fact, I did not know that Jaxon Smith-Njigba's brother is currently playing in the MLB for the Pittsburgh Pirates. I did not know that. With the 13th overall pick, I have the Jets selecting Peter Skoronski, offensive tackle out of Northwestern. With Mekhi Becton just being super unreliable in terms of health, like when he's on the field, Mekhi Becton is one of the best offensive tackles in the league, in my opinion, but it's staying healthy, and that's the struggle with that for him. And so I have Peter Skoronski coming to New York to, play opposite of Mekhi Becton, or if Mekhi Becton gets hurt, playing in place of Mekhi Becton. And, if he struggles at offensive tackle, he has the ability to kick into guard if you need him to play guard as well. So I think he's got the flexibility to play, of course, tackle and offensive guard. And so I do have the Jets selecting the 6'4", 294-pound offensive tackle out of Northwestern. With the 14th pick, I have the Patriots selecting Joey Porter Jr., cornerback out of Penn State. They lost J.C. Jackson last year. They re-signed Jonathan Jones. I think they have, Jalen Mills as well as a cornerback on their defense, but I don't know if Jonathan Jones or Jalen Mills is a number 1 cornerback in this draft. And the number 3 cornerback in this draft is still a really phenomenal cornerback. And I have the Patriots selecting him here at the 14th overall position. Maybe you don't see a lot in terms of the interception category with the 1, but, he is just a dominant corner. You can see the passes defended. He is a shutdown, lockdown corner. They really didn't throw his way all too often at Penn State, so he was a beast for the Nittany Lions. And you can see the 34 games, 113 tackles, 20 passes defended, and the 1 interception heading out to New England. With the 15th overall pick, this is going to be my most controversial pick, I feel like, but I have Darnell Washington, tight end out of Georgia, going to the Packers. Darnell Washington is my number 1 tight end this year, over Michael Mayer, and over Dalton Kincaid or Michael Mayer. Yeah, Darnell Washington is a beast. He is maybe not the most polished, the best tight end in terms of being a receiving threat, but I think he does what the Packers want him to do. He can block. He can be that dominant pass blocker that you need him to, but he can also be dominant in terms of the receiving game. A lot of people discredit, like, oh, look at those receiving numbers. That isn't good. Well, he had to share a tight end room with Brock Bowers, who will be the number 1 tight end in next year's draft class. So I just want to remind you, Brock Bowers was still on that Georgia team. So that is why the offensive numbers don't look as great. 27 games, 45 receptions, 774 yards, 17.2 yards per play average, and 3 touchdowns. But he's got the versatility as a blocking tight end as well, and was having to share the tight end snaps with Brock Bowers, who will probably be the number 1 tight end next year. So yeah, Darnell Washington is my number 15 overall pick to the Green Bay Packers. With the 16th overall pick, I have the Commanders selecting Deonte Banks out of Maryland. I think it's no surprise that the Commanders are in need of a cornerback, and Deonte Banks is the best available. When people started mocking him in the first round, I thought people were crazy. I was like, what are people doing mocking Deonte Banks in the first round? But then when I got to watching his film, I was presently surprised and shocked, and I was like, you know what? Yeah, I can see why he's in the first round. The tape just speaks for itself. A very talented corner, going to help out what Kendall Fuller, they're in the Landover, Maryland for the Washington Commanders. In 28 games, he has 83 tackles, 11 passes defended, and 2 interceptions. Sorry, I know I'm going fast. I just need to, I'm going to try and finish this faster so we're not sitting here for half an hour, even though it looks like we probably are. With the 17th pick, I have the Steelers selecting Darnell Wright, offensive tackle out of Tennessee. Darnell Wright did not give up a sack at all last season. He is a dominant offensive tackle, and you need to protect your franchise quarterback and Kenny Pickett, who you drafted last year, and provide some blocking for Najee Harris, who did struggle this past season. So I do have the Steelers selecting the 6'6", 335-pound offensive tackle out of Tennessee. With the 18th pick, I have the Lions selecting Lukas Van Ness, edge out of Iowa, going to the Lions. Van Ness kind of reminds me of a George Karlaftis kind of, but he's got his own unique bull rush move that, a lot of people couldn't defend last year at Iowa. So Van Ness is a very talented edge rusher. It's shocking that he's fallen this far. I mean, I feel like this is a pretty good place for him, and especially playing opposite of Aiden Hutchinson. Can you imagine that defense? You got Aiden Hutchinson on one side, you got Lukas Van Ness on another side. You're picking up Devon Witherspoon to be your number 1 corner. I mean, the Lions are building something special, especially, with their offense, giving Jared Goff another season, isn't a bad idea. Maybe they draft a quarterback next year, like a Caleb Williams, like a Drake May, someone like that. Yeah, Lukas Van Ness is a phenomenal pick for the Lions in 26 games, 70 tackles, 19 tackles for loss, and 13 sacks. Yeah, Lukas Van Ness is a beast heading to Detroit. With the 19th overall pick, it's another edge rusher, and it is Nolan Smith out of Georgia. If you watch Nolan Smith's combine, you can see how much of a freak he is. That speed, that athleticism, that pure dominance coming off of the edge. Didn't play in the college football playoffs, but yeah, he is a beast coming out of Georgia. If you just watch the film, this is a crazy talented edge class. So if you need an edge rusher, you're picking one up. And especially since the Eagles traded down right here, they moved down 9 spots for the number 10 overall spot, which is the pick they got from New Orleans. They moved down 10 spots, and they still get one of the best players in this draft class. Is absolutely insane. In 33 games, 110 tackles, 20 tackles for loss, and 12.5 sacks. Yeah, especially when the Eagles are very good at planning ahead. They drafted Jordan Davis last year, for when Fletcher Cox retires because he's getting up there in age. Now they're drafting Nolan Smith out of Georgia for whenever. Brandon Graham retires or moves on from the team because he's also getting up there in age. So that's something the Eagles are very good at, and I would not be shocked to see the Eagles go with an edge rusher here. With the 20th pick, I have the Seahawks selecting Myles Murphy, edge out of Clemson. Yeah, I mean, Myles Murphy definitely has fallen in the draft. He was my number 2 edge at one point and probably a top 10 prospect. Has definitely taken a tumble down the board, but I still think is a fantastic prospect. And if the Seahawks get Jalen Carter and Myles Murphy, oh my gosh. Imagine that defensive line with Jalen Carter, Myles Murphy, and Boye Mafe, who they drafted in the second round last year. That is going to be an insane defensive line, and honestly, that's going to be terrifying. 35 games, 116 total tackles, 36 tackles for loss, and 18.5 sacks, headed up to the Pacific Northwest in this mock. With the 21st pick, I have the Chargers selecting Zay Flowers, wide receiver out of Boston College. Zay Flowers is not my second wide receiver, my number 2 wide receiver in this class. I just want to point that out. He is not. But I think for what the Chargers need in terms of a speedster, I think that Zay Flowers is going to be the best fit for them. Yeah, they could go Quentin Johnston, they could go Jordan Addison, but I think right now Zay Flowers was probably going to fit what the Chargers need to do best. That, or I could see them going tight end right here as the other position. But if you look at what Zay Flowers has done, he's a veteran with 48 games played in college. With 200 receptions, 3,056 yards, averaging 15.3 yards per play and 29 touchdowns. Zay Flowers is a monster, and yeah, I definitely think that the Chargers will be picking up, like I said earlier, a wide receiver or a tight end. Those are the only 2 positions I really see them going in this class. So I am going with Zay Flowers, the wide receiver out of Boston College, and this mock is headed to LA. With the 22nd pick, I have the Ravens selecting Jordan Addison out of USC. Now, with the signing of Odell Beckham Jr., this pick has changed. Before the Odell Beckham Jr. signing, I got Quentin Johnston, who is, just a playmaker. He's got a lot of speed. He's got the height at 6'4", and I thought, yeah, he can go to Baltimore and play there. But with the signing of Odell Beckham, kind of shift into Jordan Addison, more the route runner, technician type of guy. And so they have 2 different skill sets for, whoever's going to play quarterback, whether that's Lamar, whether that's Tyler Huntley, getting them more weapons, because the Ravens wide receiving core over the past few seasons has been lackluster in my opinion. But in 35 games with both the USC Trojans and the Pittsburgh Panthers, he has 200. Hold up, let me fix this. Once again, I messed up. It would be impressive if he had 219 total tackles, but he had 219 receptions for 3,134 yards, averaging about 14.3 yards per play and 29 touchdowns in his college career, and he is headed to Baltimore. And then with the 23rd overall pick, it's another receiver, but it's going to be Quentin Johnston out of TCU. They already got Justin Jefferson on one side. Why not pair him with Quentin Johnston? I know they have KJ Osborne, but losing Adam Thielen is going to be a blow for them. So they didn't trade up for the quarterback, so I have him going with Quentin Johnston, a talented receiver. My number 2 overall receiver has fallen to the 23rd overall pick. Yeah, you're going to pick him up here. It was a scheme fit mostly for the Ravens and the Chargers ahead of him, who passed on the receiver. But now Quentin Johnston heading to Minnesota here. Going to be helping Kirk Cousins out. Going to be playing opposite of Justin Jefferson. That's going to help him out tremendously. And Quentin Johnston is a 23rd overall pick to the Vikings. In 30 games, he has 115 receptions for 2,190 yards, averaging 19 yards per play, and 14 touchdowns with the Horned Frogs. Moving on to the 24th overall pick, I have the Jacksonville Jaguars selecting Brian Branch, defensive back, honestly, out of Alabama. Now, the thing I like about Brian Branch is my favorite player in this year's draft. maybe not the best overall, but he is my favorite player in this draft. And the simple fact is he can play up high at safety if you need him to. If you want to have a defensive back package, you could put him as a sub linebacker to play as that extra defensive back package. He can play in the slot as a cornerback. He can play in the nickel as a corner. He can play in the dime as a corner. He can do it all. A multi-positional guy. That's why he's my favorite prospect. He has been for a while now. If you saw some of my previous mock drafts, I had Brian Branch going to the Broncos when we still had the 29th overall pick. Fortunately, we don't have that anymore, and we don't have a first-round pick anymore, so we're not going to get him. But, he's my favorite player in this draft, and, he has been for, I'd say, 3+ months. But I do have the Jaguars selecting him, helping out that defense with Tyson Campbell and whatnot. So, yeah, with 35 games played, he has 111 solo tackles, 61 assist tackles, 172 total tackles, 19.5 tackles for loss, 4 sacks, defended 23 passes, has 3 interceptions. He's going to support in the run. He's going to help in the pass game. He can do it all. Safety, kind of like the running back of the defense, kind of undervalued, but Brian Branch is an absolute beast. And I think he's in my top 10, top 15 prospects in this year's draft. So, yeah, I have him going 24th overall to the Jaguars. With the 25th overall pick, I'm going with Michael-Schmitz, center out of Minnesota. I was a little bit, confused. I didn't know what I wanted to do with this pick for the Giants. But when I looked at Bengal, who, I respect Bengal and his evaluations of what he does, and he had his favorite team, the Giants, selecting Michael-Schmitz out of Minnesota. I was like, that's interesting. I like Michael-Schmitz. I don't know about a first-round pick, but, I could see him as a fringe late first-round pick, second-round pick. And then I looked at their depth chart, and then with Ben Bredson as their current center, I'm like, yeah, I could see that happening. I could see them picking up a center to protect Daniel Jones, help out Saquon Barkley. I can definitely see that. So I do have him coming in because Ben Bredson as their center, ain't it? I mean, that ain't it in my opinion. So I have the 6'4", 320-pound center out of Minnesota heading to the Big Apple. With the 26th pick, I have the Cowboys selecting my number 3 overall prospect. So it's Will Anderson is my best prospect, then Jalen Carter, then Bijan Robinson. It's just tough. It's tough. I don't think any team will trade up to draft Bijan Robinson because of his being a running back. And then I don't know if any team will draft Bijan Robinson over some of their prospects, but I have the Cowboys going with Bijan Robinson because, you think about pairing Bijan Robinson and Tony Pollard at in the backfield. And then I don't remember how long Tony Pollard has under his contract, especially. So, of course, they released Zeke Elliott. But now so Tony Pollard has he signed a 1-year deal with the Dallas Cowboys, so he's going to be a free agent next year. And if you draft Bijan, then you can let Pollard walk, and then Bijan can be your bell cow back like you had Zeke be for so many years. Bijan is a phenomenal prospect, but because of him being a running back, he's going to fall in the draft. And I have him going to Dallas here at the 26th overall pick. Look at his stats: 31 games for the Longhorns, 539 rushing attempts, 3,410 yards, 6.3 yards per carry, which is pretty solid. And he has 33 touchdowns on the ground. And then in the air, he's got 60 receptions for 805 yards and 8 touchdowns. Next up, I have the Bills selecting O'Cyrus Torrence, guard out of Florida. I honestly forgot about O'Cyrus Torrence, but he is the best guard in this class from Florida. I believe he transferred from the University of Louisiana Lafayette to the Gators. And yeah, he is heading to Buffalo to block for Josh Allen and just building up that line for Josh Allen. He said he's going to try and stop being running so much because he thought of himself as a athlete or a football player first, then a quarterback. So he's going to try and start slowing that down. And A big part of that is going to be helping blocking for Josh and O'Cyrus Torrance. Why not grab the best guard in this class to protect Josh Allen? And here the Bills go back-to-back Florida Gator first overall picks. Jeez Louise, I cannot talk. But yeah, the 6'5", 332-pound guard out of Florida is headed to Buffalo. With the 28th pick, I have the Bengals going Michael Mayer, tight end out of Notre Dame. I don't think they have Hayden Hurst anymore, if I remember correctly. Of course, they lost C.J. Uzomah, not this past offseason, but the previous offseason. So I'm trying to remember. I'm looking up right now who the Bengals have at tight end. I don't think it's anyone. It's Irv Smith. They signed Irv Smith from the Vikings, who, of course, was like a second, third-round pick back in 2019. But Michael Mayer is just insane in his offensive production. This could be Dalton Kincaid. If Bengal fans are watching, if you want Kincaid, just swap him in for that, I guess, if you want. But Michael Mayer is my number 2 tight end, so I have him going here to Cincinnati. In 36 games, he has 180 receptions for 2,099 yards, 11.7 average, and 18 touchdowns. And you're adding another weapon for Joe Burrow to throw to. Maybe not the strongest blocker. He can block, but probably not the strongest blocker in this class. But yeah, I have Michael Mayer going to Cincinnati. With the 29th pick, I have the Saints selecting Kalijah Kancey, defensive lineman out of Pittsburgh. With this pick has been, just bounced around. This originally was the 49ers pick, but was then given to the Dolphins when the 49ers traded up for Trey Lance. Then the Dolphins traded that to my Broncos when we traded Bradley Chubb to Miami. And then we traded this pick to New Orleans, and of course, for the rights of Sean Payton, who is now our head coach. So this pick has been passed around, but the Saints need a defensive lineman, and I have them going with Kalijah Kancey, defensive lineman out of Pittsburgh, to help that D-line. 33 games, 91 total tackles, 34.5 tackles for loss, and 16 sacks. He's not only going to help you in the run game, but he's going to help you rush the passer. He can do it. He can do both. So yeah, Kalijah Kancey is headed to New Orleans in this mock. With the 30th pick, I have the Eagles selecting Kelee Ringo, cornerback out of Georgia. A lot of people, Ringo has fallen out of the first round, and hey, maybe he does, and my Broncos have met with him at his combine, and if he was somehow able to fall to the 67th overall pick, I'd love for the Broncos to pick him up. I don't think that happens. I think he'll be a second-round pick, but, he's still talented in my opinion. We've seen how fast he can run. He's a fast corner. Coverage skills can be improved upon, but hey, I really like Kelee Ringo out of Georgia, and I have him heading to the Eagles with their second first-round pick. They picked up Nolan Smith first, and they picked up another Georgia Bulldog right here. I know they had 2 first-round picks last year. The Eagles did, I believe. And I know they selected Jordan Davis. Did they? Maybe they didn't, but it would just be funny. 2 Georgia first-round picks this year, a Georgia first-round pick last year. Yeah. I do believe that Kelee Ringo is still a first rounder, at least in my opinion. He's a first rounder. It's bugging me right now. I gotta look up for the Philadelphia Eagles. They have Jordan Davis, and then did they have another first round pick? Maybe not. Maybe they did it. Maybe they didn't. That was my fault. But yeah, their last 3 first-round picks, according to my mock, would have been from Georgia. Yeah, that's crazy. 29 games, 76 tackles, 15 passes defended, and 4 interceptions for Ringo coming out of Georgia, headed to Philadelphia. And with the final pick in the first round, it's one of my personal favorite prospects who just sneaks into the first round, and it pains me as one of my favorite prospects as he's going to the Chiefs. But it's going to be Will McDonald the 4th. I had to put that there because, I don't know. I like the Roman numerals for 4th. Edge out of Iowa State, headed to the defending champs, the Kansas City Chiefs, to help out George Karlaftis on that defensive line. 48 games played, 125 total tackles, 40.5 tackles for loss, and 34 sacks. going to help out the production there, going to help out rushing the quarterback for the Chiefs and getting that pass rush, building that dominant defense with Chris Jones, with George Karlaftis, Will McDonald, Trent McDuffie. Is Juan Thornhill still there? I think he is. Justin Reed, just building up that defense, because the offense is insane. But if you build a killer defense, man, that is going to be scary, and that is going to suck for me as a Broncos fan. But this is my first and only 32, I guess in this case, 31 team first round mock draft this year. I'm sorry I didn't do more of these. I wanted to, just never got her done. But next year I do plan on doing a lot more. To all my Broncos fans watching, Broncos 7th round mock draft, I believe it will be 11.0, which is the final one, will be out tomorrow. And then on Wednesday, there will be my top 10 players at every position for the NFL draft coming out. And then, of course, on Thursday, it's going to be a day one stream. So the NFL draft starts at 7 p.m. Central, 9 Eastern. I will be starting my stream at 6 p.m. Then on Friday, there will be the day 2 stream, which will start an hour earlier. The draft starts an hour earlier, so my stream will also be starting an hour earlier. And then on Saturday, it's going to be a morning stream as well to wrap up the NFL draft. But thank you so much. We're almost at draft day. Make sure, if you do enjoy, to leave a like and subscribe to the channel down below. Your support is greatly appreciated, and I'll see you in the next one. Peace out.